The giant room was filled with strange sounds and bright lights. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the middle of it all, looking around at the weirdest collection of alien creatures he had ever seen. Some looked like giant bugs with too many arms. Others were just floating clouds of gas that somehow talked. A few looked almost human, but with skin colors that nature never intended. Jake had been to many dangerous places in his 45 years, but this was different. This was the Galactic Council chamber, and he was the only human in a room full of aliens, who wanted his species to disappear. The creature doing most of the talking was called Vexthara. She belonged to something called the Zalarian Empire. And Jake thought she looked like a cross between a snake and a person with 4 arms that never stopped moving. Her voice came through the translator device clipped to his uniform, and she did not sound happy. "Your species has gone too far," Vexthara hissed, her 4 arms pointing at different holographic displays around the room. "You have expanded beyond your single star system. You have built ships that should not exist. You have refused to ask permission before entering space that belongs to others." Jake wanted to laugh. The idea that space belonged to anyone seemed silly to him. Space was big, really big. There was plenty of room for everyone. But he kept his mouth shut and listened. Dr. Lisa Park stood next to him, her fingers dancing over a small computer as she worked to translate the dozen different alien languages being spoken at once. Lisa was one of the smartest people Jake had ever met, and right now she looked worried. That was not a good sign. "The Council has been watching your species for 50 years, continued another alien, this one looking like a walking tree with too many eyes. When we first found you, you were barely capable of reaching your own moon. Now you have settlements in 12 different star systems. This expansion must stop." Jake shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The artificial gravity in the chamber was slightly different from Earth normal, and it made him feel off balance. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small and uncomfortable. It was working. The holographic displays showed star maps with Earth at the center. Red lines marked human settlements and trade routes. The aliens had been watching and counting everything. They knew exactly how many ships humanity had built, how many people lived on each colony, and how much trade moved between the systems. "The Council has made a decision," Vexthara announced, her voice getting louder. "Humanity will cease all expansion immediately. You will surrender your advanced weapons. You will accept tributary status under Zalarian rule. You will pay taxes to the Council for the privilege of existing in our galaxy." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had been expecting something like this, but hearing it out loud still made him angry. The idea that humans should pay aliens for the right to exist was beyond insulting. "Furthermore," the Snake Woman continued, "you will limit your population to no more than 10 billion individuals. You will not build any more ships capable of faster than light travel. You will share all your technology with the Council for review and approval." More aliens began speaking, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of demands and threats. They wanted human colonies abandoned. They wanted human ships scrapped. They wanted humanity to crawl back to Earth and stay there like good little children. Jake looked around the room again, this time really studying the aliens. They were all different species, but they had one thing in common. They all looked comfortable. They all looked like they had been in charge for a very long time and expected to stay that way. "The Council represents 47 different species," said a new voice. This alien looked like a giant jellyfish floating in a tank of water. "We have maintained peace in this galaxy for over 2,000 years. We will not allow one primitive species to disturb that peace." Jake almost smiled at being called primitive. These aliens had no idea what humans had been building in the last 50 years. They saw the ships that traveled between colonies, the ones that were meant to be seen. They did not know about the other ships, the ones that were never meant to be detected. "You have 72 Earth hours to comply," Vexthara announced, her 4 arms coming together in what Jake assumed was a gesture of finality. "Refuse, and your species will face the combined might of the Galactic Council. We have 12 different fleets waiting at the edge of your solar system. Each one is larger than your entire space navy. Jake nodded slowly, as if he was thinking very hard about what he had just heard. The truth was, he had already made up his mind about humanity's response. More importantly, he had already communicated that response to Admiral Carol West back on Earth using a series of hand signals that looked like nervous fidgeting. "We will need to discuss this with our leadership," Jake said into his translator device. His voice was calm and steady, giving no hint of what he was really thinking. The aliens seemed satisfied with this response. They'd probably expected humans to panic and beg for mercy. They were about to learn that humans did not beg. As Jake and Lisa were escorted out of the chamber, Jake caught her eye and winked. Lisa tried not to smile, but Jake could see she was fighting laughter. They both knew something the aliens did not. Humanity did not care about their threats. The walk back to their small ship felt like a victory march. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humans were really capable of when someone tried to push them. Around, it was going to be educational for everyone involved. The meeting room was buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, far from any alien eyes that might be watching. Admiral Carol West sat at the head of the long table, her silver hair pulled back tight and her blue eyes sharp as steel. She had been expecting this day for years, and now it was finally here. Around the table sat the most important people in human space. General Tony Martinez commanded the Earth Defense Force. Dr. Susan Clark ran the secret research programs that had been building humanity's real weapons. Colonel Pete Adams had just returned from a spy mission in alien space, and his report was sitting on the table in front of everyone. "So they want us to roll over and play dead?" General Martinez said, his voice full of disgust. "Typical alien thinking. They believe size equals strength." Admiral West nodded and pressed a button on the table. The lights dimmed and a holographic display filled the air above them. It showed the solar system, but not the version the aliens had seen. This display showed humanity's true military strength. "They counted our merchant ships and colony vessels," Admiral West said. "They counted our patrol boats and escort ships. They think that is all we have." The display changed, showing new contacts appearing throughout the solar system. Ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, and in the dark spaces between planets. Ships that looked nothing like the vessels the aliens had cataloged. Dr. Clark stood up and walked to the display. "For 20 years, we have been building the Shadow Fleet. Every ship is designed to be invisible to alien sensors. Every ship is built to fight enemies much larger than itself." The hologram showed sleek vessels that looked more like deadly fish than traditional spaceships. They were small, fast, and covered in technology that the aliens had never seen before. Each one carried weapons that could punch through alien armor like it was paper. "The Council thinks in terms of big battles between big ships," Dr. Clark continued. "They line up their fleets and shoot at each other until one side gives up. They have rules about honor and fair fighting. They announced their attacks before they happen." Colonel Adams laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "I spent 6 months watching their fleets. They are impressive, but they are slow. They follow predictable patterns. They never fight dirty." Admiral West smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "They are about to learn that humans do not play by their rules." The display changed again, showing alien territory. Raid dots marked Council fleet positions throughout the galaxy. There were hundreds of them scattered across dozens of star systems. It looked overwhelming, but Admiral West saw something else. "They are spread too thin," she said. "They rule so many systems that they cannot defend them all properly. They rely on fear and reputation to keep their subjects in line." General Martinez leaned forward. "So what do we do?" "We cannot fight all of them at once." "We do not fight all of them," Admiral West replied. "We fight smart. We hit them where it hurts most. We make them realize that ruling humans is more trouble than it is worth." Dr. Clark activated another part of the display. It showed supply lines connecting Council territories, trade routes that kept their empire running, and communication networks that allowed them to coordinate their forces. "The Council is like a giant spider web," she explained. Cut the right strands and the whole thing falls apart. Colonel Adams nodded. Their fleets are powerful, but they need fuel, food, and replacement parts. Take away their supply lines, and those big ships become floating tombs. The room fell silent as everyone studied the display. Each person was thinking about what this meant. Humanity was about to go to war with an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy. The smart thing to do would be to surrender and hope for the best, but humans were not known for doing the smart thing. There's something else, Colonel Adams said quietly. The Council is not as united as they pretend. Some of the smaller species are tired of being bullied. They might help us if we show them it is possible to fight back. Admiral West stood up and walked around the table. The Council expects us to panic. They expect us to beg for mercy. They expect us to act like every other species they have conquered. She stopped behind her chair and looked at each person in the room. They have never met humans before. They do not know that we get stubborn when someone tries to push us around. They do not know that we fight hardest when we are outnumbered. General Martinez grinned. So we give them a lesson in human nature. Exactly, Admiral West replied. We show them that threatening humanity was the biggest mistake they ever made. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every person in the room raised their hand. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not beg. Humanity would fight. As the meeting broke up, Admiral West stayed behind to study the display. The alien fleets looked impressive, but she was not worried. She had seen what human engineers could build when they put their minds to it. She had seen what human soldiers could do when they were fighting for their families, the Council thought. They were dealing with a primitive species that would collapse at the first sign of real opposition. They were about to learn that humans were different. When humans were threatened, they did not run or hide. They got angry. And angry humans were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 alien warships appeared in perfect formation, their massive hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. Each ship was the size of a small city. Bristling with weapons that could destroy planets, Vextara stood on the bridge of her flagship, her forearms folded in satisfaction. The ultimatum had expired 12 hours ago with no response from humanity. Now she would show these upstart humans what happened when someone defied the Galactic Council. Scan the system, she ordered her sensor officer. I want to know where their pathetic fleet is hiding. The Zellarian officer worked at his console for several minutes, his expression growing more confused with each passing second. Admiral, I am not detecting any human ships. The system appears to be empty except for their civilian stations. General Korthak of the Brutarian military caste laughed from his position at the weapons station. His massive frame barely fit in. The oversized chair and his tusks gleamed as he smiled. They have already run away. Cowards, just like I expected. Vextara was not so sure. Something felt wrong about this. She had expected to find human ships frantically trying to escape, or desperately preparing for battle. Instead, she found nothing but silence. Begin moving toward their home planet, she commanded. Maintain battle formation. I want them to see us coming. The Council fleet began its slow, stately advance toward Earth. The alien ships moved in. Perfect coordination, their formation unchanged for 1,000 years. It was an impressive sight, designed to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who saw it. Captain Rachel Stone watched the alien fleet through the sensors of her ship, the Nighthawk. She had been waiting in the asteroid belt for 3 days, her small vessel hidden among the rocks and debris. The Nighthawk was only 50 meters long, smaller than some of the alien shuttles, but it packed weapons that could punch through anything in space. They are beautiful, her weapons officer, Lieutenant Gary Walsh, said quietly. Too bad we have to wreck them. Rachel smiled grimly. She had been fighting in space for 15 years, and she had learned that big ships made big targets. The Council fleet was moving slowly, predictably, following patterns that human intelligence had been studying for decades. All Shadow Fleet units, this is Nighthawk, she broadcast on the encrypted channel. Execute Plan Alpha on my mark. Throughout the solar system, human ships began to move. They emerged from hiding places that should have been impossible to use. Some had been hiding in the rings of Saturn, their hulls disguised as chunks of ice. Others had been drifting in the asteroid belt looking like ordinary rocks. A few had even been hiding on the far side of the sun, using the star's radiation to mask their heat signatures. The Council fleet never saw them coming. Rachel targeted the largest ship in the formation, a massive dreadnought that served as Vexthara's flagship. The Nighthawk's main weapon was a kinetic penetrator, a chunk of metal accelerated to nearly the speed of light. It had no warhead, no explosive payload. It did not need one. "Mark," Rachel said quietly. The Nighthawk fired an invisible lance of destruction crossed the space between the asteroid belt and the Council fleet. The penetrator struck the alien flagship's shields, overloaded them in a fraction of a second, and punched through the hull like it was made of paper, all across. The solar system, other human ships opened fire. Lieutenant Commander Bob Turner's squadron hit the Council fleet from behind, their ships moving at speeds that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. The aliens had built their ships for long-range battles between fleets that moved slowly and fired predictably. They were not prepared for enemies that moved like angry wasps and struck without warning. "What is happening?" Vexthara screamed as her ship shuddered under multiple impacts. "Where are they coming from?" Her sensor officer was frantically working at his console, trying to track targets that appeared and disappeared faster than his equipment could follow. "I am detecting multiple small vessels, but they are moving too fast for targeting solutions. They are not fighting like a civilized species," General Korthak growled as his own ship took hits. "They are using terrorist tactics." The Council fleet tried to return fire, but their massive weapons were designed to hit other large, slow-moving targets. The human ships were too small, too fast, and too unpredictable. They struck like lightning and vanished before the aliens could respond. Captain Pete Wilson brought his ship, the Stinger, in close to one of the alien vessels. The Council ship was 10 times larger than his own, but size did not matter when your enemy could not hit you. The Stinger's plasma cannons carved through the alien ship's hull, targeting critical systems with surgical precision. "This is not a battle," Wilson's navigator, Lieutenant Mary Foster, observed as they watched another alien ship lose power and begin to drift. "This is a massacre." She was right. The Council fleet was falling apart. Ships that had never been defeated in battle were being torn apart by enemies they could barely see. The aliens had built their tactics around intimidation and overwhelming firepower. They had never faced an enemy that simply did not care about being intimidated. Vexthara's flagship was dying around her. Emergency lights flashed red as system after system failed. The proud vessel that had conquered a dozen worlds was being picked apart by ships that should not have been able to scratch its paint. "Order a retreat," she gasped as another impact shook the ship. "All ships withdraw immediately," but it was too late. The human ships had surrounded the Council fleet, and they were not interested in letting anyone escape. This was humanity's first lesson to the galaxy, and they wanted to make sure everyone understood the message. The Council had started threatening humanity, but humans did not care about threats. They cared about results. The news of the Council's defeat at Earth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that have been under alien rule for centuries suddenly began to whisper about the humans who had fought back and won. The Council's response was swift and brutal. They declared humanity a threat to galactic peace and called for total war. Emergency sessions were held on every Council world. Military leaders who had never lost a battle tried to understand how their mighty fleet had been destroyed by a species they considered primitive. The answer they came up with was simple: humanity had cheated. "They do not fight with honor," complained Admiral Zeftok of the Klaxon Hive, his insect-like features twisted with disgust as he reviewed the battle reports. "They strike from hiding like cowards. They target supply ships and medical vessels. They have no respect for the proper ways of war." What the Council called cheating, humanity called winning. Captain Amy Roberts stood on the bridge of her ship, the Defiant, as her small fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. She commanded 12 vessels, each one smaller than a Council escort ship, but packed with weapons and crewed by people who had grown up hearing stories about the alien threat. "Target acquired," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper. He was young, barely 25, but he had a gift for finding weaknesses in enemy defenses. "Nexus Prime is lightly defended." They never expected anyone to attack a supply depot this deep in Council space. Amy nodded. The Council had made their first mistake by spreading their forces too thin. They had hundreds of worlds to defend, and they could not put a strong fleet everywhere. Their second mistake was assuming that humans would fight like everyone else. Nexus Prime was a crucial supply hub that fed 3 different Council sectors. Massive cargo ships arrived daily, bringing food, fuel, and weapons to the alien fleets. The planet's defenses were designed to stop a traditional invasion fleet, not a surgical strike by fast-moving ships. "Take us in," Amy ordered. "Remember, we hit hard and fast. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We get in, wreck their supplies, and get out." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Immediately, they split up, each ship heading for a different target. The planet's defense grid tried to track them, but the human ships were too fast and too unpredictable. Amy's ship headed for the main fuel depot, a massive complex that could supply an entire fleet. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Kate Morris, had been studying the facility's layout for weeks. She knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. "Firing," Kate announced calmly. The Defiance plasma cannons reached out across space, striking the fuel depot's main storage tanks. The explosion was visible from orbit, a bright flash that lit up the night side of the planet. Across the system, other human ships were hitting their own targets. The food processing center that fed the Council's eastern fleets went up in flames. The weapons factory that produced ammunition for their ships was reduced to rubble. The communication array that coordinated supply shipments was turned into expensive scrap metal. The planet's defenders finally managed to launch their own ships, but it was too late. The human fleet was already jumping back to hyperspace, leaving behind billions of credits worth of damage and a very confused enemy on the other side of the galaxy. Commander Steve Thompson was fighting a different kind of war. His ship, the Wanderer, was not designed for combat. Instead, it was built for exploration and long-term missions in deep space. His crew included scientists, diplomats, and engineers who were more interested in making friends than making enemies. "The Vorthan Republic has agreed to meet with us," reported Dr. Nancy White, his chief science officer. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she had a talent for understanding alien cultures. "They have been under Council rule for 200 years, and they are tired of it," Steve nodded. The Vorthans were one of dozens of species that had been conquered by the Council over the centuries. They had been forced to give up their independence, their culture, and their right to govern themselves. Now, hearing about humanity's victories, they were starting to wonder if rebellion was possible. "What do they want from us?" Steve asked. "Protection," Nancy replied. "They are willing to declare independence from the Council, but they need to know that someone will help them fight when the Council comes to drag them back." This was the part of the war that the Council had not expected. They had assumed that their subject species would remain loyal out of fear. They had not considered that successful rebellion might be contagious. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in the border region between Council and independent space. Steve and Nancy sat across from the Vorthan delegation, 3 tall, thin beings with blue skin and large eyes. They looked nervous, constantly checking the exits and speaking in whispers. "The Council has ruled our world for 10 generations, said the lead Vorthan, a female named Lyra. "Our children have never known freedom. We have almost forgotten what it means to make our own choices." "But you remember," Nancy said gently. "That is why you contacted us." Lyra nodded. "Your species has shown us that the Council can be defeated. You have proven that small ships can destroy large ones, that clever tactics can overcome superior numbers. We want to learn from you." Steve leaned forward. "We can teach you what we know, but you have to understand something. The Council will not let you go easily. They will send fleets to force you back into line. Are your people ready for that? We are ready to die free rather than live as slaves, Lyra replied firmly. It was the same conversation happening across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered, enslaved, or simply ignored by the Council were starting to believe that resistance was possible. The war was becoming something the Council had never faced before, a revolution, back on Earth. Admiral Carol West watched the reports coming in from across human space. Human ships were striking Council targets throughout the galaxy. Alien species were declaring independence faster than the Council could respond. The mighty galactic empire that had ruled for millennia was starting to crack. The Council still had more ships, more weapons, and more resources than humanity could ever hope to match. But they were learning that superior force meant nothing. If you could not bring it to bear effectively, humanity had started a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. 2 years had passed since the Council first threatened humanity. The galaxy looked completely different now. The massive Council fleets still existed, but they spent most of their time trying to put out fires instead of conquering new worlds. Dozens of species had declared independence, and more were joining the rebellion every month. Admiral Carol West stood in the observation deck of Freedom Station, the new headquarters of what humans called the Free Worlds Alliance. The station orbited Earth, but it was built with technology from 20 different species. Ships from across the galaxy docked here daily, bringing news, supplies, and new allies. The Council is requesting another meeting, reported Commander Paul Davis, her aide. He was a young man with serious eyes who had learned to speak 6 different alien languages in the past year. They want to discuss peace terms, Carol almost laughed. The Council had spent 2 years trying to crush humanity. And their allies? They had sent fleet after fleet to restore their authority, but each time they had been defeated by tactics they could not understand. Now they wanted to talk about peace. What kind of peace? Carol asked. Complete surrender, Paul replied. They want us to return to our original borders, give up all our advanced weapons, and accept Council authority over human space. Carol shook her head. They still do not understand. They think this is about territory or resources. They have no idea what we are really fighting for. The truth was, humanity had never wanted to conquer the galaxy. They had just wanted to be left alone to explore, grow, and build their own future. The Council had forced this war by trying to make humans into servants. Now they were learning that some species could not be enslaved. Captain Jake Morrison entered the observation deck, his weathered face showing the strain of 2 years of constant warfare. He had been promoted to admiral after leading several successful raids deep into Council space. His hair was grayer now, and there were new lines around his eyes, but his determination had never wavered. The final Council stronghold in the Outer Rim has fallen, he reported. The Klaxon Hive has surrendered. Their queen has agreed to withdraw all forces from independent worlds. Carol nodded. The Klaxons had been one of the Council's most loyal members, but even they had finally realized that the war was lost. Their insect-like warriors were deadly in traditional battles, but they could not adapt to the fluid, unpredictable style of human warfare. What about the Zilarians? Carol asked. Jake's expression darkened. Vexthara is still fighting. She has gathered the last of the hardline Council forces around her home system. She swears she will never surrender to primitive humans. Carol sighed. Vexthara had become a symbol of Council resistance. The snake-like alien had lost every battle she had fought against humans, but she refused to admit defeat. Her stubbornness would probably get a lot of people killed before this was over. Then we finish it, Carol decided. Gather the fleet. It is time to end this war. The final battle took place in the Zilarian home system, where Vexthara had assembled the last 200 ships that remained loyal to the old Council. They were arranged in perfect formation around their capital world, waiting for the human fleet to arrive. Jake commanded the human forces from his flagship, the Liberty. It was a new ship, built with technology captured from defeated Council fleets and improved by human engineers. Unlike the massive alien vessels, it was sleek and fast. designed for the kind of warfare that had won the war. "They are not running," observed his tactical officer, Lieutenant Mary Bell. She was one of the new generation of human officers who had grown up during the war. "They are going to fight to the end." "And we give them the fight they want," Jake replied. "All ships execute Plan Omega." The human fleet did not attack in formation. Instead, they scattered like leaves in the wind, each ship following its own path toward the enemy. The Council ships tried to track them, but there were too many targets moving too fast in too many directions. The battle was over in less than an hour. The Council ships, designed for the slow, formal warfare of the old galaxy, could not cope with the chaos of human tactics. One by one, they were disabled or destroyed by enemies they could barely see. Vexthara's flagship was the last to fall. Jake brought the Liberty alongside the crippled vessel and offered the alien admiral a chance to surrender. She refused, choosing to go down with her ship rather than admit defeat. Jake watched sadly as the alien vessel exploded. He had never wanted to kill anyone, but some people would not accept that the old ways were dead. 3 months later, Jake found himself back in the same council chamber where this had all started. But now he was not a visitor begging for mercy. He was the representative of the Free Worlds Alliance, negotiating the terms of the council's surrender. The chamber was much quieter now. Many of the species that had supported the council had switched sides or simply disappeared. The few remaining council members sat in their chairs like defeated children, their dreams of galactic domination shattered. "The war is over," Jake announced to the assembled aliens. "The council is dissolved. Each species will govern itself, according to its own laws and customs. There will be no more tribute, no more forced service, no more conquest." One of the remaining council members, an elderly creature that looked like a walking flower, raised a shaking appendage. "What about order? What about peace? Without the council, the galaxy will fall into chaos." Jake smiled. "The galaxy has been in chaos for 2,000 years. You just called it order because you were the ones in charge." The new galactic government was based on simple principles that humans had learned long ago. Every species had the right to govern itself. No one could be forced to join an alliance they did not want. Trade and cooperation were voluntary, not mandatory. It was not perfect, but it was better than what had come before. The galaxy was learning that freedom was messy, but it was better than the alternative. As Jake prepared to leave the chamber for the last time, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The council had started by threatening humanity, expecting them to surrender like every other species had done, but humans were different. When threatened, they did not beg or hide. They fought back with everything they had, and they did not stop fighting until they won. The galaxy was free, and that made all the struggle worthwhile.